All right, does it say recording on your side?
This meeting is being recorded.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. All right. So, welcome to the Maley Way, or welcome back to the Maley Way. I'm your host, Jim Maley. Today, I have on a special guest, and I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about like I always talk about with students, like how big social media has been a problem, and just technology has been a huge problem. But in this instance, I think it's been great because it connected you and I. I don't know when it was, but a couple months ago, I posted on LinkedIn Holy Cross alumni and Susan Prout from an organization that you are a part of. I had a right to. She reached out and she mentioned your name, and I think I just like followed you on LinkedIn or something. And then you might have reached out, and somehow we got on that phone call, and I probably talked to you for like an hour on my way to school. Like I didn't even go into school. I waited like an extra 15 minutes because I wanted to keep talking to you because I just like kind of felt inspired. I felt inspired by your story and by your willingness to talk. And now here we are now, like two completely different stories, but I think we kind of have similar thoughts on how we address them. Um, and before I start, I wanted to warn people listening, and I don't know where it's going to go, but there could be parts that may be triggering for people. But in my eyes, I will take triggering over silence like every single time. I think silence keeps people struggling, and silence keeps abusers in power. And I think talking like what you're doing can help lead to healing. So, with that, I wanted to introduce Steve Peacock and welcome you to the Maley Way podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. I am so excited for this conversation. And as you said, social media does a lot. And the immediate thought that came to my mind was so does fire and so does
Yeah, right.
rain.
Yeah,
And it's all about how you use it. And in my case, as you said, it led us together, but it's also led me to the Prouts, which is the reason I'm able to be here in the first place. So really great to have the opportunity to talk to you and your audience about some real important stuff that does get pretty heavy, as you said, but
yeah.
honestly, it's one of the cases where at least I found is there's quite a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I think when we were preparing for this, I asked if you could send me a couple things, and you sent me your speech from when you talked at your school, McQuaid Jesuit School, all boys that you went to. And I started reading through it, and like it drew me in. And then I think I asked you, hey, can you send me any
Yeah.
video? Because I wanted to see it. And it was the first time that I think you had spoken before, but that was the first time at like a school setting with,
Right.
younger boys. And I just thought it was amazing. And I thought the way that, like, the way you came out in like the football jersey, you're an old football, like, I just thought that was so cool and a way to like kind of captivate those kids. Like, I think if you come into a situation like that, like I always dress, I dress like a PE teacher when I go and talk, because I think if you go in with a suit and tie and are looking all spit, like I don't know if that necessarily registers. And I could tell like those kids were completely engaged, completely into it. I was like driving on my car ride home. I almost was like sneaking peeks at the video, which I shouldn't have been doing. But I just thought it was so cool to see someone do that. And it was kind of like your moment where you really kind of leaned in and started that. How did that feel like doing that back at your old school?
It was transformative.
Yeah.
So just to back up, like you said, I grew up in Rochester, New York, and went through the public school system. My siblings went through the parochial St. Thomas More system, but then I and most of my brothers were six boys and one girl. So it was
Hmm.
three. my sister Ann, and then three. And it was an Irish Catholic family, which I'm sure we'll get into
Oh
with
yeah.
everything that goes along, everything that goes along with that, the beauty and the mess. And I went to high school with a very, very painful secret, which was that I was sexually abused by a much older, 5, 6 years older, male neighbor for, I'll just say anywhere from months to years.
Mhm.
I actually gave up my quest to try to remember everything
Yeah.
and have kind of moved on in terms of what the impact it had and how I can live my full life. But in any event, being able to go back to the place that I entered with this secret
Mhm.
and develop some incredible relationships with my classmates, many of whom I'm so close with today.
Mhm.
To be able to return to that place, to be able to share now as an adult, at the time, a 52-year-old, what I couldn't as a 14-year-old was such an honor, a blessing, like I said, really transformative moment for me to really have a full circle moment of going back to a place because I haven't been back. I now live in Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And to be able to go back to that place, not knowing what I was going to find.
Mhm. Yeah. Right.
I do have three, I guess, adult children now. My youngest is college senior, and then my daughter, and then a daughter who just came back to Boston and is going to be, or as it is in social work school, and my son who's um, pretty well down the road of becoming a physician.
Yeah.
So I had teenagers.
Mhm. Yeah.
But quite frankly, and this is what I spend a lot of time thinking about as well, is that of the audiences that scare me, it's high school aged boys.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's just a fact, even being one and friends with them and and
Yeah.
having one,
Yeah.
and it's obvious to kind of look to what was done to me by someone of that age, but I'm sure there are other things as well based on my experience in school. So, um, just a quick how it came to be. I ended up
Mhm.
having no connections with the school and called a friend of mine from high school. We weren't particularly close, but we were friendly. We ended up going to college together, and he was back in Rochester, and I called him up and I said, "Hey, Kevin, I just want to share something with you. And I know that I think he had a son or two at the school, and I knew
Mhm.
you were close with folks. And I told him that I was abused. And the reaction then from him has been what it has been from most people at my age now, which has been, oh my God, I'm so sorry. What can I do? And in this particular case, I had to ask. I said, can you introduce me to somebody? So he introduced me to Adam Baber, the president of the school at the time.
Mhm.
And then he couldn't have been more opening, welcoming, and interested in having me come back and talk to the students. And
Yeah.
that I didn't know what I was going to get then. Like a lot of
Mhm.
people shy away from these types of conversations and topics. I think they had brought in another former classmate who was an alcoholic who came back and
Mhm.
talked to the kids. So they had some kind of prior experience, but this, I think, the first time they really addressed this particular topic.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
so I did,
that's
yeah,
what I was gonna say with that is what I thought was very cool was that they brought you in and trusted what you were going to say and they allowed you to do it. Like you talked about, obviously the abuse topic is a tough topic, but you talked about some things that happened because of
hmm
it afterwards that people are afraid to talk about in schools. Things like getting into alcohol or even like pornography. Like
hmm
I thought
hmm
it was great that you talked about that, because that is an issue. Like that is a huge issue, especially with boys right now. And the fact that they kind of allowed you to talk about those things, I thought was amazing. And I'm sure it really registered with a lot of those kids.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is, and I talk about it in the corporate setting as well, but just in life, the masks we wear, right?
Hmm.
And particularly for boys and then eventually men, the what's kind of referred to as the man box of limited emotions and limited things you can and can't do socially, to be able to come in, like you said, both like clothing wise
Hmm. Yeah.
as well as the topic and just say, here's the deal. Here's what I
Hmm.
didn't know then. Here's what I wish I knew then.
Hmm.
Here's what I can tell you about the ramifications of abuse and sexual violence. And I got to tell you that reception that I got was absolutely inspiring.
Yeah.
I did talk about it. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the speech. I was like, had two things. One is, had I been in the seat 30 years ago and someone came in to talk about this, I would have been the it's going to use the word, so not the clown.
Yes. Oh, I
So
remember this.
use
I thought this was a good way to, yes, I
I
liked
was
how
going
you
to
did
use a
that.
different word, but yeah, I
Yeah.
would have been the clown doing everything in my power to
Yes.
distract everybody around me and laugh and make a joke of it. On the other hand, had I not done that and had I listened and truly really brought in what a speaker like me was saying, I would have been like, holy cow, it would have been
Hmm.
painful, it would have been hard. Hopefully I would have reacted, but then I would have started the healing journey at, 14 and not
Right.
really spend a lifetime in therapy and then, require that serendipitous meeting with Alex to really
Yeah.
make progress.
Well, and
Um,
I think that's what you're saying too with like the mass aspect. I think we all grow up saying like thinking or being told that that is strength. Like having that mask on is strength. But I think probably what you found and what I found, and what I'm guessing what those kids realize as you're up there talking, to me, that is strength. Like that is true top level toughness that not everyone can do. Um, and I found that over the like since I've started, talking about my stuff, is like the kids really they really respect it and they really relate to it. And, it's something that I would have thought years ago talking about that would have just led to disastrous things. It's actually led to great things for me with the people I'm talking to. And I'm assuming that you kind of feel that same sense with what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And just for everybody's benefit, the real quick version of it is I just got up and said, when I was coming to school, like I alluded to earlier, I had this secret. This was done to me. I also try to be very precise about language. We use language in vague ways that
Hmm.
help kind of diffuse what happens. So nothing happened to me. I was intentionally groomed and then sexually assaulted. So, that is the story, but there's much more to it in terms of what my family life was, how I didn't feel like I belonged. As I said, I was the only one that went to the public school.
Hmm.
After I can joke about it now, but after wetting my pants in first grade in the parochial school, I started there, and I think both I went back and forth and ended up in a public school, and I never felt like I really belonged. I used humor to get attention, and then
Hmm.
that humor, which over time became obnoxious, more misogynistic, more sexist, intensified. So it got me a whole lot of male attention and adoration, which I used throughout high school, college, and then my career to succeed. So I talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about the fact that, my family just didn't uh, know what to do. Like it
Hmm.
was not within their kind of constitution to have these conversations. And my mother and father, who were very, very wonderful and beautiful people, very kind, did a lot of things for others, very religious. Um, but, had said things like everything happens for a reason or God has a plan. And
Yeah.
when you're a child and you hear that, it really doesn't square.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that, so I always talk about like with things that happened in my past, I'm like, I used to always say, like, I'm almost happy that they happen. And then I was talking to this sports psychologist for the Charlotte Hornets, and she kind of reframed, talking about words, she kind of reframed it because she kind of said what you said. She was like, everything does not happen for a reason. There are some bad things that happen, but like, I think she was like, what you're trying to say is like, you are using that to make something good out of it. Like, it's not necessarily that you're happy it happened, but you're using that to, somehow make a purpose out of it. And, so yeah, when you said that, that's just what I thought. Like, no, everything does not happen for a
Yeah.
reason. Like, that is definitely shouldn't have happened, but you are now many years later doing something really positive from it, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other thing that I point out now that I touched upon in the speech, which is important and certainly very relevant right now, is the competing constructs, I guess, of masculinity.
Yeah.
And you alluded to before, which is strength is muscle, strength is gym, strength is stoicism, strength
Hmm.
is, courage and knowing what to do and facing your fears. And the reality is there are parts of that are admirable,
Hmm.
uh, but it's one dimensional.
Yeah.
It's one dimensional. And without empathy, without sympathy, without self-love, without expressions of love and gratitude, um, you really end up, as I did, in a very, very confusing place where, at least for me, I became very self-absorbed is the right word. I suppose you could find some people that would say, "Yeah, Steve, that's the one."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or selfish. I was always looking to make sure I got mine.
Yeah.
And what's ironic is like I said, there's plenty of shows where there was always that one guy who was just, the lovable character saying all these inappropriate things, degrading things to particularly about women and other groups. And for me, I was like, that's just who I am. I'm
Yeah.
just, at least I'm not a locker room guy who just says it in the locker room and comes out into the world and presents very differently. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I took pride in that. I'm like, now I can look it back and I'm like, well, that was really misguided.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
really
But I mean,
misguided.
it is misguided, but it's also, I mean, I think understandable in terms of what something like abuse can do to you. Like, I mean, it can change you, and I've seen it, unfortunately, with students. Like, I've seen huge changes, and then you find out, like, oh no, this is something that has happened to them. I guess what I wanted to ask you, and I kind of asked you, I sent you a text about this, but I know there was probably, you said there was like some anger
Yeah.
towards family members.
Yeah.
Was that more because they missed it, more because how they reacted when you finally disclosed to them, or was it like kind of a little bit of both?
Yeah, the second part that I had not thought about that second part of the question was I don't really think about anyone missing it.
Yeah.
Like, which is actually kind of shocking because we all shared bedrooms. It was a pretty small house for 9 people,
Yeah.
and there was people all over the place.
Hmm.
So yeah, when I kind of look back at it, I'm like, how in the world could that be done? The first time I was lured from the backyard after a football game
Yeah.
in the backyard into my basement.
Oh man.
Like I just it is hard to fathom. Uh, but that wasn't the source of my anger because back then I was just like, this is. I was getting attention. It was very confusing. I was having pleasure. Like all of these things that we had no dialogue at home about, boundaries and consent and relationships. It was all in the context of a religious framework of you don't have sex.
Yeah, right.
Right. So there was no kind of conversation around it. So I don't even know when it was happening or after it stopped that I was really gave it much thought, like I needed to talk about it or somebody should have intervened.
Yeah,
And I just I knew it. It's not never a recovered memory, but I just didn't, I thought about it a lot, but never thought about it in terms of the damage that was done.
yeah,
And then I left, went to high school. Met good friends, definitely started to abuse alcohol. That continued in college, but in a way that many were abusing alcohol. So
yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
don't think I stood out in that way. But in any event, it wasn't until someone disclosed to me, which is
Yeah.
very common that, that vulnerability, or it's tough to just come on its own.
Yeah, right.
So when someone disclosed to me, I shared. And at that point, then told my parents, told
Hmm.
my fiance, told, I believe I told all my brothers. And it was weird because it wasn't as if anybody didn't believe me,
Yeah.
um, including my parents, but my parents didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, and I say these things now much more out of, um, uh, from a learning position and educating position
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
versus anger.
Yeah.
My mother said to the woman who was going to be my wife, "Well, I'm glad he has you." So it's
Yeah.
just this total abdication of responsibility. I don't believe there was any, apology that we missed it. It was just kind of this happened and you move on. So I never felt like, other than my sister, that anybody really cared that much or understood the gravity.
Yes. But
Mm.
I think one of the things too, and this is why I think it's so important what you're doing about it, is the educational side of it. Like no one talked about that type of stuff back then. So yeah, maybe they missed some things, but like no one was educated on like grooming. Like that
Mm.
was never a term. No one knew. And then at the same time, I don't think people understood the damage that it could do to someone long term. So I think it kind of speaks to why what you're doing and going around and talking to people, going on podcasts, writing about it. Like, I think that is a that can be a preventative
Mm.
thing for other people, for it to keep it from happening, because now you're educating not only the people who are getting abused, but those people around them that could recognize it.
So important. And I just want to finish
Yeah.
the anger part because the anger was there. The
Yeah.
anger kind of started when I shared and nobody really cared. It intensified over time when we'd get together and nobody really addressed it. One of the worst was my parents had invited the person who abused me. And again, language, I don't consider my abuser. It's not my anything, right?
Yeah. Right.
This is the person who abused me. And to my brother's wedding. And I didn't know. They didn't mention it to me. Like, so that's but the extent of their ability to put it out of their mind or
Hmm.
not make the associations or whatever it was. So I totally got, I mean, Jack and Ginger, like many Jacks and Ginger.
Yeah.
And at one point, I think I was like picking up and twirling each of the bridesmaids.
Hmm.
And then I headed for the bride's grandmother.
Oh my God.
And I went to pick her up. Now I'm wasted.
Hmm.
I went to pick her up, small, frail woman. I've got my arms on her waist, ready to lift her up like I did the 30-year-old bridesmaids, which I shouldn't have done either. But she looks at me and she said, "Please put me down. I've got osteoporosis."
Oh God.
And to be honest with you, like that was the first time I've heard the word. So I have no idea what she's saying.
Yeah,
And there was some stroke of luck that gave me the lucidity in that moment to actually put her down and go on with
that's
my way.
good. Yeah.
But yes, that was very, very good. But in any event, the worst rupture was several years later, back in 2019, that we did a family reunion. I talked about this in the speech, as you know, but
Mhm.
I went to the reunion with my kids. Most of my siblings, I think my one of my brothers wasn't there, and his kids weren't. But it was basically a recreation of my childhood. It
Yeah.
was a big house. Everybody was sleeping there, 35 people all over the place, lots of drinking, lots of games. Every minute was full. There was a pickleball court, there was a chipping green. And then doing frisbee tag. They're calling it the Peacock games.
Hmm.
And that wasn't enough. There was a nearby field that had like kickball and a pond and a picnic, and every single minute was full of activity. And many of us hadn't seen each other for a while, so
Yeah.
there was no real connection or sober moments of dialogue or what's going on in each other's lives. And well, I think I called one of my brothers a name, and the next day I left, and this is often what happens too, is I left and my family we went to go get a sandwich, and I don't know what was said, but I blew up at my now family, my wife and my kids, which,
Hmm.
it comes out. It came out, and after that I didn't speak to some of my siblings for a while.
Hmm.
For a while. So that anger was in my mind just it had no place to go and it was going to stay forever. But it was moderated by, you know what? I have the painkillers. I've got the alcohol. I like to joke around. I travel a lot. Like I had a lot of distractions. So I'll pin that and say, thankfully, through this process, and I had been in therapy since my mid 20s, but since a kind of a meeting with the dad of a survivor
Hmm.
reached out to me, or I reached out through LinkedIn. So again, talk about social media.
Hmm.
Two things there. One is that's a very positive use of social media, but also it's a business platform. It's a corporate platform. So the
Yeah.
last place I think I would be talking about sexual abuse and depression and mental health. And now it's all I do. But it's not my
Yeah.
job. I'm in finance, but
Right. Yeah.
it's all I do. I look for every opportunity to do that. And every time there's someone who sends me a note that says, "Thank you. I needed that.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that."
Hmm.
But in any event, just to kind of eliminate the suspense, this kind of that revelation and me feeling like I don't have to blame myself. Like I said earlier, I didn't really understand grooming. So I'm like, well, why did I do it?
Hmm.
Why did I participate? I would sometimes look forward to going over to his house. Like,
Yeah.
how twisted is that? And then I blame myself.
Yeah.
A lot of self-loathing, a lot of self-blame, and hearing the words, it's not your fault, and seeing the work that Alex Pratt was doing as well as his daughter, Chessie Prout, who was assaulted in high school.
Hmm.
It made me realize that it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I snapped a finger and, oh, there's Steve's all healthy.
Hmm. You're right. Right.
But it took all of the stigma away. I
Yeah.
basically uh, reframing or putting the blame on the person who did this to me. It wasn't even
Yeah.
my parents. They didn't do it to me. No, I was able to access the anger to them and my siblings because I felt that was so hurtful, kind of a secondary abuse, but that they weren't responsible for the abuse. I mean,
Yeah.
could they have taken steps to educate me or prevent it or be more involved? Absolutely. But they didn't abuse me. One
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
So I have kind of done a lot of work I'd say accelerated work in individual therapy and group therapy and couples therapy to come to realize that. And it was my individual therapist said this, which is, you don't, let me just remind you that you were all raised in the same house.
Hmm.
Or you were forged in the same cauldron, which is what she said. And I realized, holy crap, I've had 25 years of therapy. I've had these seminal moments where I've been able to do self-discovery and really figure out what self-love is and self-acceptance and shed myself of these stigmas. My siblings like, didn't. So I kind of,
Right.
when you were talking about earlier, which I also talked to like Alex and Chessie about as well, is I'm not happy about what was done to me. I'm not happy about what was done to anybody.
Hmm.
But when I lay the chips on the table, with all the fortunate things that have led me to this place, I've been able to do a lot of good with it. Hopefully, been in a position to educate some parents to protect their children better.
Hmm.
Hopefully, for kids that have either gone through something, either as a perpetrator or as a victim or survivor, that this will help them kind of think about it differently.
Hmm.
Um, and a big part of my audience, as I said in the corporate place, is adults.
Yeah.
Because now you got people like me at 40, 50, 60 who just have so much uh, entrenched beliefs about what they can give and get to other humans, give and get from other humans, and talk
Yeah.
about with other humans because they've
Hmm.
never done it.
Yeah.
To be able to go out there and say, yeah, it's possible. And as you said, it's worth it. It's worth
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And, I think as you're speaking, like I'm thinking about what you're doing with that situation. Like it's almost like I was in health class just the other day and we were talking about things that are preventative and reactive. And, a lot of our society, it's all reactive, reactive, reactive. I think the cool thing about what you're doing is it's almost both. So, like, when you go around and speak, it's reactive in a way that, yeah, there might be someone in that room that has
Hmm.
been abused and it can help them. But also, what you're doing is you're going around and trying to be preventative to get the message in potential abusers' heads of like how bad this is and how much it can destroy people. I think that's kind of interesting with what you're doing is you're kind of getting both sides of that in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah. And a couple of things just to point out, which truly, truly are tragic, truly
Yeah.
are tragic, but real.
Yeah.
Like we don't walk around in a hurricane and maybe other than my mother, she had the ability. She would walk through a hurricane and think it was a nice day and it was good for the plants to get the water. But
Yeah.
we don't deny it. We don't
Yeah.
avoid that it's happening and go look for shelter. So the realities are that a lot of this gets talked about, which is 1 in 4 girls will be sexually assaulted by the time they can vote. Much less known, and I think the stats are kind of reflect that it's a lot of boys and men won't talk about it for a number of reasons I'm happy to talk about. But so those stats are anywhere from 1 to 6 to 1 to 13.
Hmm.
So that's pretty prevalent. So if you do the math, like that's roughly larger than the state of California.
Yeah.
So I say there's 36 million people walking around, and as we talk about in the organization, I have the right to think about that, the impact on the families and friends. So you're definitely talking about something north of 100 million people who or more that have been impacted. And I don't know of many other issues in our country that is the case, and yet we don't talk about it, and
Yeah.
yet we don't think about it. And then beyond those stats, the one that is really, really hard for people is that upwards of 90% of at least childhood sexual abuse, the victim, which I think is an appropriate term when it happens, and then they immediately become a survivor in my mind.
Hmm.
90% are known to them.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's family members, that's fathers, that's grandfathers, that's teachers, that's police. Like I hear these stories all the time. And in no way am I saying that any of those people or those roles are naturally dangerous to children. What
Hmm.
I'm saying is that groomers are really good at what they do. They go into professions where they can have access to children,
Hmm.
and they are really, really, really good actors. So it's not beware of everybody. What
Yeah.
it is just be aware that you don't know the one.
Right.
You don't know the one. So, that's a hard, hard thing for a lot of people to get their head around when they're raising children. And my wife and I talk about this all the time, which is, how much reality do you bring to your children
Yeah.
and awareness so that they can still operate with trust in a system and in people, however, take the right steps to protect themselves. And yeah, as you may not be surprised, my take on that, where I land on that is if a child is old enough to be harmed, you want to talk about something that's going to destroy their trust.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
Right.
it's a very important piece of the puzzle. So I think that's again, I know people don't want to hear that and they don't want to think about it, but it is real.
Yeah. Well, and then like those stats that you listed earlier, like so we do this thing, Aaron's Law in
Mm.
Illinois, where this was a woman who was sexually assaulted. She's actually was from our district, and we teach about it from the time, a kid is 6 to high school. And like that's the hardest lesson for me to get through because it like makes me sick to my stomach, the stats. Like it is, I think about like my daughters and my sons, and I'm just like, I cannot believe that it is that prevalent. And, when I talk about it with the kid, like all I think like I have anger. Like there's just anger in my head. And I'm wondering, like, for you, like even with your own abuser, did he ever get in trouble, or did you ever confront him, or like how do you look at that person right now?
Yeah, that is
I know it's
there's
hard.
a
I mean,
yeah, there's a lot in there's a lot in that question, and I have largely focused on first and foremost my recovery and healing.
mhm,
And then in what you alluded to earlier, the advocacy and then the prevention and then the support. I have done a little bit of digging to um, try to just understand where he is
mhm,
and where he's on the West Coast now, doesn't appear to have children,
okay,
um, which is good.
yeah,
And I haven't gone much further than that. And I don't know what I'm going to do, to be perfectly honest with you. I,
yeah,
you I need to spend the time to think about that.
yeah,
Because
no,
yeah,
that,
just to put the quiet part out loud,
yeah,
on one hand, as I said before, he is nothing to me. I don't need any rationale, reasons. I don't need to get any details, and I don't need any type of reconcilement or forgiveness.
yeah,
But the obvious part is that I would be absolutely horrified he was continuing to or did abuse other children
Yeah, no,
or adults. I don't know.
that makes definitely perfect sense. I didn't mean to like bring that up, and I just know like from my perspective, just even hearing of it, it just makes me angry. Like it just makes me angry, and I can't imagine like how that, you know, could affect you. Um, now you kind of mentioned it before, but I think like what you're doing is like a mentor that boys need. Like, I don't know if you've been following in the news at all. There's been like a lot of research out there about
Mhm.
how boys are being kind of left behind. And like the initial reaction by people is always like, okay, whatever, it's boys, they're being left behind. But I mean, I see it even in school. Like it is like the girls are light years ahead of the boys in terms of a lot of different things. And I think like male mentorship is huge. Like it's a huge thing that I think we need more of. And like what you're doing, I think can go a long way with that. And I'm kind of thinking as a father of three boys and a girl, like how do I as a parent kind of navigate that? Like I think it's important to have older people show you the way. However, how do I recognize that versus like the grooming aspect? It's a hard thing, and I'm trying to, I'm just thinking about it as a parent. It's hard. I want that mentorship, but then it's also like, well, like, should I sacrifice? I don't know. I don't know what the correct answer is. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it is a tough one. And
Yeah.
as you would imagine, intentionally, um, I'm very intentional about where I spend my time. And we within the organization, again, I have the right to, and any organization like that has a lot of really good practices and laws around, or rules around, just it's kind of common sense, but it isn't because you're like, oh, I'm going to help you. Let's go for a coffee or let's go, like it's like easy things like try to do things in pairs, try to do
Right.
things in public.
Hmm.
There's no reason you should be in a room with a closed door or going in a car somewhere or in a remote. Okay, so these are kind of some basic type of things. So beyond that, it, what I focus on and I think can be very, very powerful is the another side of mentoring, which is modeling.
Yes.
Right. So the modeling is what do you say? Where do you say it? Who do you stick up for? What are you willing to put in writing in public?
Hmm.
Because what we see, and I have seen much and think much about men and boys, and I could tell you about how I got to that kind of part of my journey. But at the end of the day, um, there are so many, and I'm not using this in a good way, attractive, compelling male models
Hmm.
who are leveraging that one side of masculinity that I mentioned earlier
Hmm.
around the hyper masculinity, disconnected from connection and love and self-love and empathy and all those things. And that, for whatever reason, that is very appealing
Hmm.
for men, not just, I mean, not just young boys, for men as well to kind of lock into, there's some nostalgia piece to it. There's some kind of false um, or incomplete versions of people. Like John Wayne is this big actor, and then they talk about, his real life where, this big burly guy on the horse would get off and he's putting on his makeup and doing all these things that he wouldn't talk about in public because that wasn't part of his image. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so there's a little bit of that. And there's a little bit of when one feels threatened, which, it's hard to ignore some of the shifts. So when I went to school, college was probably 70% boys, 30% women,
Yep.
and very few women's sports.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to school, it's almost flipped. So people would look at that and say, okay, men are being, or boys are being left behind, and there's all
Hmm.
sorts of commentary about it. So, the realities are the realities. I mean, one that I think is always important to note, at least where I sit, and I see a lot of the corporate world, and we see the government, the leaders are men,
Hmm.
uh, in the companies, in government, in a lot of areas where they're the seat of power, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think there's men are doing pretty good
Yeah. Yeah.
on the scale. So that's a good reminder of
Yeah.
that. But in context, it's this positioning through these male influencers that it's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And if I have to give something up as a man or boy for a woman to get it, like
Yeah.
it's my loss and their gain.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a really a trap. Like we see it on many levels that this really basic appeal to fear
Hmm.
is extremely powerful. But when you sit back and you say, okay, well, there are a lot of other factors that are happening in our society, in our economy, in the way we live, in our technologies,
Yes.
that if we were working together, um, all genders or no genders, like we'd be a heck of a lot better off
Hmm.
than trying to pit one against the other. So I
Yeah.
think there is a huge need. Like you got to recognize things, you got to
Yeah.
acknowledge them, but then you got to attribute them properly, as I was saying.
Right.
But the modeling is so important.
Yes. Yeah, for
The,
sure.
the modeling and another point about the mentoring, it's like, okay, uh, choose your mentors wisely.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
Yeah.
like just the idea of just saying, you know what, the problem with boys is going to be fixed by an army of men going out there and leading these boys. Well,
Right.
depending on what that army's saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
and depending on who
Depend
they
on who it
are,
is.
that's
Yes.
either going to reinforce some of these issues or it'll help break the cycle.
Well, yeah, and that's too like when that Alex Prout, when I saw him introduce you, his daughter was sexually assaulted, all this stuff happened with the school, like a cover up and with the school, all this stuff. I think it's amazing. Like he could have been like, all right, F these high school boys, like screw these guys. The only thing I'm going to be concerned about is going and like getting all of those perpetrators, and that to me that would have been perfectly understandable. But I think it takes a lot of, I don't know, awareness, guts for him to go, and he's almost trying to help potential to not get there. You know what I mean? Like he's doing something to help those boys, become better men, as opposed to just, all right, this happened to my daughter. I'm gonna go after all these.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just think that's powerful. That he has the ability, the courage, the awareness to do that. Because I could easily see it going the other way.
Yeah, and it was his initial, and he talks
Right.
about this. His initial emotion was the one that men are allowed to express freely, which was anger and the desire to inflict violence
Yeah.
upon the perpetrator. But I guess the other piece in this is building community. So
Yeah.
he ended up connecting with the guy Don McPherson, who was the quarterback of the Syracuse Orangemen. I think they won the national championship, or they went pretty far. And Don ended up being a kind of educated and a really strong voice in aspirational masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
And, again, taking those two parts, it's like, okay, if I can combine all of these parts of masculinity into like a real, full, complete human,
Yeah.
which incidentally boys start out as, and then they're kind of socialized. They can all remember when they're told not to cry, when they stop hugging, when they stop saying I love you, like all of these things. He became a very, very huge advocate in that space after football. Really helped mentor Alex in that direction, and ultimately, I think Alex has helped me because when I started this journey, my initial reaction from when I met Alex was, okay, I feel so much better. I feel this burden lifted. I want to help others like me. So
Yeah.
whether they were 50-year-old men or 50-year-old women, I wanted to be able to tell this story so that I could help break the stigma and help free them of whatever shame and blame they feel. And
Yeah.
then getting involved in I Have the Right To, which is very much about bringing consent and healthy relationship discussions to schools.
Yep.
Great. That quickly, maybe not quickly, but that then morphed into, okay, a comment made, so a little bit of more serendipity by one of the schools I have the right to. They were talking to all girls schools first, and girls said, this is absolutely fantastic information. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to talk to the boys?
Yeah.
And that's when I came in the picture. And that's when we went to McQuaid. And now we've talked at several high schools and even colleges.
Yeah.
And um, it's about that other piece of the equation. It's almost like feels like it can be like teaching girls to, not walk along at night or change sides of the street or put the keys between their hands. Like they're
Yeah.
all practical realities to keep safe and not go in certain areas. Flip side is, you know what? We have got to, on this issue, be very, very clear with our boys and teenagers that this is just not okay. That's not a man. That's not what
Right.
a man does. And we need to reinforce that. We need the modeling. We need it to come from all of the conversations. This is your responsibility as a boy, as a man, to understand consent, to respect yourself, to respect others and act accordingly. Which the final thing I'll say on that, which is kind of morphed for me into, well, when you're living in this dichotomy of this is what I'm told a real man is,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm all of this. I do have all these other feelings. I can't label them. So like a cat with his eyes shut, you start to not realize that they're there. But it is you. That I think that discordance leads to the violence, to the self-violence, the self-destruction, the destruction of others
Mm-hmm.
that really impacts their mental health. So
Yes.
that's where I spend a lot of my time now
Yeah.
is talking about mental health because I do think that when people love themselves, when they accept themselves, when they have empathy for others, when they can be connected and present,
Mm-hmm.
like the human is an absolutely wonderful species. But
Yeah.
when it gets distorted, humans can do obviously really, really awful things.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And I think, like this, I'm curious, like with in terms of mental health, like with what you've dealt with and now what you're doing now, have you, I guess I'll say this is something that I talk about. I talk about when I was a basketball coach, or actually when I was a player.
Yeah.
And I know you were an athlete. Did you play basketball or were you just football?
I played football and baseball and then basketball in CYO,
Okay.
which was was
You'll
was much more horsing around.
Yeah, you'll know what I mean as an athlete. So here's when I was a basketball player, like I would want to go set back screens. And part of it was it is a selfless act to set a screen, completely selfless. And the
Mm.
reason why I would do that would, I wanted to be a good teammate. But the other reason was by doing so, by screening, I would get myself open because the person guarding me would have to help. So now I'm able to get open. So when I was a coach, I'd always say like, hey, be a selfish screener, screen selfishly. It was like a way to motivate kids
Mm.
to do it. Like, hey, you go set a screen. Yeah, you're going to be a good teammate, but you're also going to help yourself. And now that I've been speaking, I say this share selfishly. So I say that like a large reason why I'm doing this 80%, 90% is to help others. Like that is the reason why I'm doing it. But 10% is by doing so, I end up helping myself. Like I feel good afterwards, even though I talk a lot about some bad parts of my life. It makes me feel good knowing that what I'm talking about is maybe helping someone. Do you now you're talking about like really traumatic stuff. Do you like how do you deal with that? Does that make you feel good in a sense, knowing that you're helping others with it? Or does it put you in like a bad spot mentally when you do it?
Yeah, yeah. No,
I know
that's
that's a long-winded question, but
no,
like,
no, it's a great
yeah,
it's a great question with many parts to it. But I mean, at the end of the day, there is no doubt in my mind that my healing has been accelerated within community.
yeah,
So that reaction from work, I'm telling my story. It was the hardest thing was 2 weeks before McQuaid that I ever did, and I was just basically sharing this concept, which I think many of us live with, which is I worked with you for those people on the phone, almost 500 of them for 15 years. And I'm like, you knew me, the me that I wanted to show you.
yeah,
That was the funny one. That was the outgoing one. That was the competent one. That was the, the compassionate one. There was more to me that I wasn't showing.
yeah.
And that was the hardest thing that I had ever done. But by that, it was 5 minutes. I talked for 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, I probably had 50 texts, 25 instant messages, emails
Hmm.
from people that I would suspect and other people I was just blown away. Like, I'm like,
Yeah,
this person seems so serious. So, work is work. Don't bring anything in. And it was like, Steve, thank you for what you're doing. Keep doing it.
yeah,
So absolutely that helped. The McQuaid, watching those boys sit there quietly, I knew many of them had a story. There's no
yeah.
question in my mind. And that they were benefiting. And then the following year, I did the same thing in front of 1,000 corporate executives and human resource executives for the biggest companies. This is the Boeing, CVS, Deloitte, Voyas, and at the end of the day, it was the same reaction. I
Hmm.
left, stepped down, and the Disability In organization, a wonderful organization for people with disabilities, focusing now even more so on mental health.
Hmm.
Um, Said that was the first time that anyone got a standing ovation.
Yeah,
So I think people are really drawn to, they're looking for honesty, they're looking for rawness, they're looking for realness. It's hard to be a human.
yeah.
And a little pet peeve of mine is and I'm still not great at it, but this idea when you ask somebody, you casually pass them at work or in the hall, and you say, "How you doing?" And they say, "Great." And you say, "Great," and you walk on. It's like,
Hmm.
well, not only are you, if you're not feeling great, you're denying yourself, but you're also putting out in the world this false image. If everybody says they're doing great, I'm not feeling great, but everybody's saying they're feeling great. Now
Yeah,
that reinforces that, well, maybe I shouldn't talk about it, or maybe I'm alone.
yeah.
Maybe I'm alone. And that's a really, being alone, whatever it is a real hard place to be because as a species, we don't thrive when we're alone or
No,
feel like we're alone or suffer alone.
yeah.
It's so
Well,
much more beautiful in community.
yeah. And I kind of so you don't know you didn't know me 10 years, but I was like a super shy. I didn't like talking to anyone. Like I was very shy. Like I grew up shy, wouldn't talk. Um, and then like COVID really affected me. Like that was when I got to a really bad spot. And it kind of made me realize what you're saying, like how much I needed community, how much I needed to be able to talk to other people. And and like kind of what you're saying too is like people needed to know like that they're not alone. The first time that I like spoke publicly about this was at my mom's funeral.
Mm,
And I basically got up there, I wanted to talk about her relationship with my dad, us, all that good stuff. But at the end, I closed with like how she helped me the most. And that was by she shared her story with me with depression, and she convinced me to do this the same to help others. And, you know, I didn't know how it was going to be received, but like me and my wife joke around, like we didn't know anybody with mental health issues before that. After that moment, we knew so many people because now they're like, oh, this guy's up there saying it. Now I feel comfortable enough to say, you know what, I'm not doing fine or okay. Like I've struggled in the past. And it's just, I get exactly what you're saying about that. Like you kind of, people show what they want to show and maybe not necessarily
mm.
what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a beautiful gift that your mother gave you.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that we don't realize that our suffering and pain oftentimes, it can be traced to something that is very similar to something someone else
Yep.
is feeling, and
Mhm.
that communal aspect of which was not my upbringing. My upbringing
Yeah.
was we our last name's Peacock, but we used to refer to ourselves as the ostriches, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That head is so far down in the sand that
Oh, the Irish Catholic style.
yeah, Irish,
Push it
Irish, yeah,
down.
put push it down, and then as John Mulaney says, and then you die. And
Yeah.
so this idea of what you're talking about is absolutely, it's hard. The hardest thing is to say some of these things out loud.
Yeah.
The most rewarding thing is to say some of these things out loud.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Now, like I don't want to keep you too long, but I
Sure.
wanted to, kind of talk about like what you're doing now. Like what you're doing now with the I have a right to, how you see that going, what you see yourself doing in the future with this, because I do think it's so important.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. So at the highest level, I'm trying to kind of connect a lot of dots.
Hmm.
Meaning, and I'm sorry, you might have noticed this before. I've got a little furry friend here
Oh yeah, no, I figured that's what it was.
who, of course, for the last 2 hours, just taking it all in, chill on the couch, just laying there, and once I need a little time,
Yeah.
he decides it's time to go out or play or whatever. Um, So in any event, like I said, I'm in financial services, but what we do is we help people manage some of their finances.
Hmm.
I kind of look at that as we're helping people achieve their goals.
Hmm.
Yes, it's money, but money really represents something else, right? It
Hmm.
represents what money can buy. So we're like making people or helping people, benefiting people so that they can, have less stress, be more productive, make the right decisions that in the case of the retirement industry, which we're in, the whole compounding thing, if you make a mistake, you know, anywhere along the way, it could be pretty costly.
Yeah.
So when I kind of did my talk at work, things kind of clicked for me as they do with I Have the Right To, which is there's many ways to help employees,
Hmm.
right? Because employees are just people who put on the uniform and go to the office
Yeah.
or wherever to the job site. And so I started talking about this more within the corporate setting. I referred to the Disability In Conference, which then led to participation in another conference for a large client, Bechtel. Bechtel is one of the largest construction conglomerates, I think, in the world, but certainly in the United States. And we were talking about like really technical, the conference is technical 401ks and managing your um, assets and alpha, beta, and they introduced the topic of mental health.
Hmm.
So I raised my hand and said, well, I'm happy to come on the panel and share my story. And I partnered with this wonderful colleague from Mercer, Christy Ewing, who was talking about the proliferation of solutions in the
Hmm.
workplace for mental health. And again, pin drop, everybody clapped. You don't typically get a lot of claps when people are talking about the
I can imagine.
rate
Yeah.
of return or something like that. It's not generating that response. But and I said to one of the organizers who I had worked with, I'm like, this was wonderful. It seemed like there was a great reception. Why did you include it? Like for 17 years, it's never been included.
Yeah.
And she said, Bechtel has done a lot of studies and research. And one of the observations, because they're in the business and findings, is that you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide in the construction industry than a construction related injury.
Oh my God. Wow.
And this is like big rig stuff. They are building skyscrapers, tunnels, like things that um, horribly in the past. A lot of people died on the job site. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's been a huge focus. And they basically said, "Hey, we've been focused on hard hat safety for so long that we need to continue to do that,
Yeah.
but we also have to look what's underneath the hard hat."
Yeah.
And that becomes a priority. So to me, that's when a couple of things, it kind of reinforced where I was going, which is these mental health conversations. Like my epiphany happened at work on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I wasn't looking for it. And the reality is for 30 years, and I could have read about it. There were resources. Certainly when the internet came about, I could have been all over the internet looking at how do I heal from sexual abuse. I never did it. I lived in
Uh-huh.
Boston during the
Sex abuse.
the sex abuse tragedy. Something about scandal makes it seem like it kind of minimizes it.
Right.
Um, but spotlight and never really thought about it too much. That's not what happened to me.
Yeah.
Uh, And it wasn't until in the corporate space that I was confronted with it, and I had a choice, and I dove in, and that's where I am. So it's like if you're in school, if you're in a corporate space, if you're in your community, wherever you are, this message needs to be heard. So I'm trying to look for venues within the corporate space. Thankfully, we work with some of the largest companies in the world, so lots and lots of people in the high school space. We've done a lot of
Hmm.
work with boys' schools and co-ed schools. And as I mentioned, colleges, and really just try to find as many venues. This meeting you is wonderful, and having this conversation to extend it to your audience. It's all kind of tangentially related, which is at the end of the day, kind of the way I look at it is I don't know if you know Alex Warren. I'm talking about him a lot lately. I get obsessed with different musicians.
No, no, I don't.
But but he has got this song, I think it's called Bloodlines,
Hmm.
and it's basically about, you don't have to repeat the stories of your relatives.
Yeah.
You got me, I got you, brother.
Yeah.
We can do this. Um, and we can, but it's got to be very intentional because the layers of the mask, depending on the person, can be very, very deep, very, very soon, like they were with me. They can last forever, and they will,
Hmm.
unless there's some recognition and intervention. This whole concept of you learn something, okay, it's not the thing. You got to unlearn it, and you got to learn something new. It's very difficult. It's very difficult when the societal norms are working against that. So,
Yeah.
we talk about it a lot in the retirement industry and in sports too, I guess, is just inertia. So
Yeah.
we just got to get the inertia going the other way.
Yeah, right. Well, I know I just wanted to like this has been really, really inspire like your speech I saw was inspiring. This has been inspiring, not just to me as someone who's doing something somewhat similar to what you're doing, but I know people who are listening. There's likely people out there who are survivors. And I guess what I would want you to maybe be able to, what would be one? I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of messages, but what would be like the main message that you would say to someone listening right now who maybe has dealt with something that you dealt with?
Yeah, yeah, that one actually is pretty easy because what I always go back to is what Alex told me at 52 years old, the first time hearing that it's not my fault that I was abused.
Yeah.
I'm sure people assumed that, but
Yeah.
nobody shared that, and that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Tragically, like in this case, it's sucks and it's hard, and then for many people, it's unrecoverable in many different ways. But you're not alone. You're not alone. There's a huge community out there who is ready, willing, and able to love, support, and help you through those dark days for however long that happens. I'll end with one thing that I started to allude to earlier, which is you asked me about my family and my anger.
Yeah.
And I did mention that it's definitely dissipated. But part of it is their reaction now. Like this
Yeah.
shirt, I don't know if you could see it, it says Survivor. My
Yeah.
brother, my youngest brother made this shirt for me. And if you get a chance, this is kind of a play on Marcus Mumford's self-titled album, which was largely dealt with the fact that he was sexually abused.
Oh, yeah. I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's called self-titled. And if you ever want to find a place where you're going to cry, and and if you were abused, I feel you'll find some solace and comfort in his words because it's very visually depicting what it was like and what it felt like. And if
Yeah.
you haven't been abused, listen to it because then you get a good sense of, you know, how painful it is. But at the end of the song, it's more of an uplifting message around forgiveness. And in no way am I saying that anybody needs to forgive or somebody who hurt them, particularly in
Yeah.
this way. I look at it more like self-forgiveness and forgiveness around, the people who just didn't know, not necessarily the abuser, but in this case, family.
Yeah.
And so my younger brother made me this. My sister came up for the McQuaid speech. Um, Great conversations with a number of my brothers that I didn't have then. One of them said, "Hey, I didn't know what to do back then. I felt really bad about it. I felt so guilty that
Yeah.
I never brought it up." So
Hmm.
here's me thinking, "Oh my God, he doesn't even think about it. It's not important." It was very
Yeah.
important to him. He just didn't have the words and the vocabulary, and it created you know, to be honest, a 25-year schism. So
Yeah.
that's the other part when these conversations, if you have them, it can open up um, windows to try to address some of the assumptions and misinformation. Because
Yeah.
one of the things about being abused and also about being like raised in environments without kind of deep connection and emotional availability is you just create a world in your head. You just
Yeah.
assume you know what everybody else is thinking. A lot of times it's negative.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Go back to there are bad actors,
Yes.
but I think in general we just find ways to tell ourselves stories and protect ourselves. And the two words that I think about a lot now are vulnerability and empathy.
Yeah.
And
No, those are great.
that's
Yeah. No, that's aw well, and I wanted to end there, but you brought up something that I think I can relate to your brother, not along the abuse line, but like I remember one of my buddies from Holy Cross got cancer when he was like 23 years old. And it was like, I didn't reach out to him that much, or like I didn't like check it. And it wasn't because I wasn't concerned or that I didn't care. It was like I didn't know what to say or what to do, I guess you would say. And as I've gotten older and kind of have found my voice and found my way to talk, like I've talked about it with him. I'm like, man, like if this happened today, I would have been a much better friend to you. But I wasn't then. And it's kind of like what your brother was saying, like, he didn't know what to do. And again, I think that speaks to what you're doing too about like the educational side of it. Um, for so that if another guy this happens to him and his brother, maybe he's seen some more educational pieces about this. He might have the words sooner. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah.
And it is one thing that, particularly closer to abuse, the time of the abuse, that door can shut
Yeah.
pretty tightly, pretty
Yeah.
quickly
Right.
if the wrong things are said, as it was in my case. But that's the education piece of that means that if 1 in 4 or 1 in 6, that means that 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 aren't. So what's their role? Their role is to help break the cycle, change the culture, and to know what to say and how to comfort and console people and help people who have been through these horrific things heal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like a mic drop moment right there. You know what? The last thing I wanted to give you the opportunity to do, I think we need to get you out to the Midwest. The good thing is I'm in the public school system, but I also taught at an all boys Catholic school too. Like I would love to get you out here. I guess how could people reach you? Like where could people find you to maybe you know, access your knowledge and get you talking in front of them, maybe.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So I'm an open book. I'm email, happy to share at stevepeacock@me.com. Or if you want to go through the organization, I have the right2.org.
Okay.
Either way, I will coordinate with the organization to kind of talk about what would be the most effective. We love the opportunity to go into any schools to have this conversation. And yeah, as far as traveling, we have been up and down the East Coast. We have done as far as Hawaii and Seattle. So yeah, the this is not unlike the division that we see in our country in red and blue. Like these conversations are necessary in every one of those locations, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll end on that. This is not.
Not political at all. Yeah. This is
It's not
affects
political.
everyone. Yeah.
Not political. This is about helping us all be better, more aware, compassionate humans that will, that's the stuff that allows us when we collaborate better, and then we do great things as a species when we're not tearing each other down.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Steve, for not only doing this, but just for your courage in general. I just think it's an amazing thing. And as I always say at the end of these podcasts, I always say we share our stories not only to help others, but in doing so, we end up helping ourselves because that's the Maley way. Thanks,
Well,
Steve.
I'm on board the train. So
Yeah.
Jim, thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to continuing to work together to be the change we want to see.
Yeah. So thank